Welcome back, friends. Today we are looking at some of the biggest March Madness Cinderella stories, teams, seasons of all time. No, we're not going through them all. I would be here all night. And some of them I don't know about. So please educate me. If there was some that I missed, some glaring ones, I'm sure there's at least one. Anyway, so the tier list is broken down as follows. Up here we have S tier, as you can see. Below that we have classic. This is just a classic run that you think of when it comes to March Madness. Maybe not S tier worthy, but still just like a classic quintessential March Madness story. Very fun. A very fun team is obviously very fun. Maybe not the most successful, maybe not a classic, but when you remember them, you think of them fondly because of just how fun and enjoyable that team was. Kind of fun. It's fun, but it's not as fun as very fun. And then, oh yeah, I forgot they were in the tournament and won a game. You'll have a couple of those on this list, don't worry. So up first down here, we got Cleveland State. As you can see, Cleveland State rose to the ranks in 2009. They had Norris Cole, who went on to play in the NBA. They were a 13 seed, and they beat Wake Forest, who was a 4 seed, pretty handily, 84-69 in the first round. They were out of the Horizon League. Really just a fun team, if you remember this one. The downside is that they lost in the next round to the 12th seeded Arizona Wildcats. They didn't go very far. They had a one really good game. The downside with this category is that a lot of people could fill this role or this position of, oh yeah, I remember that team, right? You could probably throw 10 names out there. So while it was a little fun, I'm going to put it in oh yeah because I don't super remember them. And while I'm very happy for them and they had a good win, I don't think they really level up above that. Up next on our list, we have the 2021 COVID Oral Roberts Eagles, Golden Eagles, one of the two. They're led by Max Abrams. They had a pretty historic run for their program. They're a small school, religious school out of Oklahoma. They came in as a 15 seed and won in overtime in a nail biter against Ohio State. And then in the round of 32, they also won. They beat a 7-seeded Florida in another nail biter, 81-78. By then, they're in the Sweet 16, and they were playing Arkansas, who was a 3 seed, and they just barely lost 72-70. They had a chance to win at the buzzer, but they missed. But overall, just a great run by Oral Roberts. Their head coach went on to go at Wichita State. It's hard to not love them. Max Abrams went to Texas University later on. I am between kind of fun and very fun right now. This is going to be a tough decision. I'm going to say kind of fun for now, and then maybe change that later. Up next, I think this one will be pretty well remembered. We have 2010 Butler. This to me just speaks about March Madness in my mind. 2010, Brad Stevens, pre-Celtics, pre him going to the NBA, really pre anyone knowing who he was. They were led by future NBA player Gordon Hayward, and their run together was pretty crazy considering they came in at a 5 seed, which is pretty high, but they came out of the Big East, and they had a good season. They finished 33-5 on the year, but they beat 12-seeded UTEP, which could have been an upset, Murray State, and then it gets a little nuts because they beat number 1 seed Syracuse, number 2 seed Kansas State, and Michigan State to reach the title game, where they played Duke, and they lost by 2 points, 61-59. If you remember, it's Hayward chucking up that half-court shot and it bounces off the rim. Heartbreaking. This Butler team was so fun to watch. For me, it's classic March Madness. It's really hard to go wrong with them. I think I have to put them in S tier. They made it to the title game, and they were a 5 seed, so they were higher than I think people give them credit for, but they weren't really on anyone's radar at all. So I was impressed with them. Up next, a little bit of a different one. We have 2010 Cornell. Cornell's story is kind of similar to Oral Roberts. They were a 12 seed. They reached the Sweet 16. They're an Ivy League team, which kind of makes it more impressive in my mind. In the first round, they upset 5-seeded Temple, which was their first win ever in the tournament, like as a program. And then they went on to beat Wisconsin, who was a 4 seed, pretty handedly, 87-69. But then they went to the Sweet 16 where they lost to the Kentucky Wildcats, the number 1 overall seed, 62-45. And that team had John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, like the NBA guys. Although they had a good season, they were coached by Steve Donahue. They set an Ivy League record for 3-pointers in a season. They were led by Ryan Whitman, if you remember him. You probably don't. That's okay. They were 29-5 on the year. They only lost 1 Ivy League game. They won their conference title. This was a good team. This was a very fun team. Was it very fun or kind of fun? I don't think it's above ORU, and if I have ORU in kind of fun, I think I have to put Cornell in kind of fun as well. Next on the list, we have 2012 Norfolk State. I think I'm saying that right. This at the time was a really big upset, and it's become more commonplace since. This was back in 2012. So they were 15 seeded. They beat Missouri in Omaha, Nebraska, and Missouri was very good. They were favored by 21 in this game, but Kylo Quinn scored 26 points, had 14 rebounds, rebounds. They had a great game. This was also the year that Lehigh beat Duke as a 15 seed. A lot of 15 seeds this year. I don't have Lehigh, spoiler alert. But the downside is they lost to 7-seeded Florida in the next round. So they won a nail biter too, it was 86-84. And it's tough to put it where I'm going to put it because I think it has to go in oh yeah. Not because I hate it, just because I don't think most people know who they are beyond that one moment or anything about them. So I'm next. A lot of you will remember this one. It's George Mason. George Mason came around in 2006, and they're in the A10, the Atlantic 10. So that, to me, I think is what makes this the most crazy to me. They came in as an 11 seed, and they were really the first mid-major program to ever reach the Final Four in the modern era, which is crazy to me. In the round of 64, they beat number 6 Michigan State 75-65. Then in the round of 32, I think it got a little bit nuts because they beat third-seeded North Carolina 65-60. In the Sweet 16, they had Wichita State, who was a 7 seed. They won 63-55. And then probably the craziest game they had was the Elite Eight, where they upset the overall number 1 seed UConn 86-84 in that overtime victory, if you remember. They did lose to the Gators that year, 58-73 in the Final Four, which was tough. But I mean, that was the year of I think Al Horford and all them, so I don't blame them. This team is quintessential March Madness for me. It's above Classic. I think I have to go S tier with it. Would I put it above Butler? It's so different than Butler because Butler was a 5 seed and Butler was in the Big East. I'm going to put it above Butler. And I mean, they're neck and neck, right? They're 2 inches apart, but I think I would put them above just because at the time they were so prolific and they're still people still know of George Mason. People still know of Butler, but maybe I'll change that later. For now, I think it's where we're at. Next up, we have Mercer. Mercer was a 14 seed. They defeated third-seeded Duke 78-71. This was 2014. This is the classic Nene dance. Oh man, this takes you back, doesn't it, to 2014? The downside here is they lost to UMass, who was a 6 seed. So I don't want to give this one too much attention. For me, this is the lowest one, I think, on my list so far. It was fun. The dancing was a classic, but the actual game and team was just a fun. And you stop saying fun. Was just a upset. It was oh yeah. Could I tell you where Mercer is? No, certainly not. Up next we have Steph Curry's Davidson. This was in 2008, led by Steph Curry. Like I said, they were a 10 seed. They made it all the way to the Elite 8. And I mean, this was Curry just going insane. He had 32 points a game, which is just nuts. The Wildcats in the round of 64 beat number 7 seed Gonzaga. Curry had 40 in that game. In the round of 32, they played number 2 Georgetown and won by 4. They were down 17, and Curry again scored 30 points. I mean, it's not 40, but still. In the Sweet 16, they beat number 3 seeded Wisconsin. Curry again put up 33, and that put him in the Elite 8, which they lost by 2 to 1 seeded Kansas. He still had 25 points in that game. This team was so fun. Oh my gosh. It's tough for me, but I think I'm going to go Classic. I think they were just a classic March Madness team. Steph Curry got put on the map. Davidson got put on the map. This team is classic March Madness in my mind. They're not quite S tier because they didn't make the Final Four. Hesitantly, I'm putting them in classic. Up next, this is one of my favorites. We have 2013 FGCU. Florida Gulf Coast University came in as a 15 seed. Dunk City. In the first round, they upset Georgetown, who was a 2 seed, won by 10 points. In the second round, they also won, though. They beat San Diego State by 10 points again. They were the first ever 15 seed to make it to the Sweet 16. But in the Sweet 16, they eventually lost to Florida 62-50, the number 3 seed. This team was so fun to watch. I'm really tempted to put them in classic. I really, really, really am. Because they're not kind of fun. They're very fun. I think I have to go very fun. I don't think they were as classic as Steph Curry's team. But I mean, what's not to love about them? Yeah, I'm going to put them in very fun. Up next, we have 2018 Loyola Chicago. Loyola came in as an 11 seed. This is Sister Jean's team. They upset Miami, who was a 6 seed on that last second 3 that they had by that lefty. In the second round, they beat number 3 ranked Tennessee after Clayton Custer hit that turnaround jumper thing he had. Clayton Custer, that's a name you haven't heard in a while. In the Sweet 16, they beat number 7 seeded Nevada by 1 point. They had a bunch of close games, jeez. And in the Elite 8, they beat Kansas State, who was a 9 seed, but that one was a huge win. It was 78-62. So it was their first Final Four since 1963. Didn't know they made it to the Final Four, but here we are. They were head coached by Porter Moser. If you remember now, I think he's at OU. Cam Krutwig, Clayton Custer, Dante Ingram, that team. Sister Jean, the team chaplain, the 98-year-old woman. She was a classic. They did lose to the national title runner-up, Michigan, who was a 3 seed. They lost by double digits, which was tough. But this team was so fun. I'm going to put them in classic. I think they were a very classic team. I'm really tempted to put them in S tier because they made it so far as such a low seed. Loyola's tough. I'm trying to make a decision. If I do put them in S tier, they're going to be the lowest team in the S tier for sure. I don't know if I can put them above Steph Curry though. But the argument, yeah, I got to put them in S. I'm sorry, Curry. Lowest of the S's, but they had the same finish as George Mason. Curry's team only made it to the Elite Eight. Tough, painful, but I think you have to. I don't like that. But do I like anything on this list? We'll see. Next, we have UMBC. This is the classic 16. I need to stop saying the words on the screen. They beat the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, Virginia, by 20, which was nuts at the time. This was 2018. They shot 50% from 3. Their senior guard had 28 points. Like, that's just kind of how it works. The sad thing is they lost in the second round to the Kansas State Wildcats, who were a 9 seed. So this was the first ever 1 seed to go down in the first round ever. It happened since, but it almost happened this year. Thanks, Duke. Ryan Odom went on to coach at Virginia, which is kind of crazy. I am between classic and very fun. I'm going to put them in classic, below Curry. Classic, not because they did super well, but just because they beat the number 1 overall seed, and that has never happened before. So they're a classic team. They weren't the best team, obviously, but they beat the best team. Well, obviously not. Not to be outdone, Farley Dickinson, FDU, played Purdue as a 16 seed. This was in 2023. They beat number 1 seed of Purdue. They actually had a first 4 game against Texas Southern, which they won by a little more than 20. And this was Zach Edey's Purdue team. They had 16 forced turnovers. They won 63-58, but they lost in the round of 32 against FAU, who was a 9 seed. But FAU did really good. This was Dusty May's team. They made it to the Final Four. Another one I forgot. Oh, Dusty May's team. Shoot, I forgot about that one. Well, there's one I forgot. So FDU, I think I'm going to put them in kind of fun, only because I think UMBC took their crown from them a few years before. I'm going to put them above Cornell and below ORU. They were fun to watch, but other than that Purdue game, I don't think anything crazy happened from it, which you could say about UMBC, but it was historic. So still great upset. Up next, we have Middle Tennessee. Oh man. Middle Tennessee was 2016. They played the number 2 ranked Michigan State Spartans. They were a 2 seed that year. They won 90-81, if you remember that one. Middle State won Conference USA's tournament, and then they beat Michigan State on March 18th. The downside here is they lost to 10-seeded Syracuse by 25 in the next round. So as much as I would love to put them super high, they're going to go in, oh yeah. I'll put them above Norfolk, I think, and Cleveland State. I'll put them the highest in the OES because they were a classic. Tom Izzo's team got upset, but hard to put them much higher. Up next, we have Oakland, Jack Golke, who made 10 threes against Kentucky, 80-76 in this game. Oakland was a 14 seed and they beat Kentucky. This was 2024, so pretty recent. The downside here is they lost to NC State, who was an 11 seed, which we'll get to later. But this team was just a blast. Like, their shooting, they would literally just have this dude jack up threes. He scored like 30 points just off threes, which is insane. I am tempted to put them in kind of fun, but I'm going to put them in the oh yeahs. We'll call it a tie between these two, between Middle Tennessee and Oakland. Up next, we have the 2022 St. Peter's Peacocks, coached by Shaheen Holloway. They were the first 15 seed to ever reach the Elite Eight, but they just lost in the Final Four. And they're on a 64. They upset Kentucky. Kentucky got upset a lot. Then they played Murray State in the round of 32, who was a 7 seed, won by 10. They took down Purdue, who was a 3 seed in the Sweet 16, won by 3. And then the Elite 8, they lost by 20 to North Carolina, who was an 8 seed. They had a really good run. Shaheen Holloway went on to coach at Seton Hall. I think he's still there. It's his alma mater. This was a super fun team, and I'm debating putting them in Classic. I'll put them above UMBC, below Curry. Super fun and such a low seed to get so far. Put this coach on the map, put this really program on the map. They went so far just off hustle and hard work. Hard to fault them. A lot to love with St. Peter's. Now we're going back to Shaka Smart in 2011 when he was at VCU. This is a really great Cinderella story. They were an 11 seed and they went from the first 4 because they were really kind of not certain to get in. Honestly, they finished 28-12 in the CAA at the time, and they were on the bubble of even making it, which is kind of crazy to me. me. This was like the Havoc full court pressure team back when Shaka was doing that. In the first 4, they won. They beat USC, who was an 11 seed. They were competing for that spot. In the round of 64, they just smoked Georgetown, who was a 6 seed. They won by almost 20. The round of 32, they beat Purdue, who was a 3 seed, 94-76. In the Sweet 16, they just edged out Florida State, who was a 10 seed. And in the Elite 8, probably the biggest upset, they beat number 1 seed Kansas by 10 to get to the Final Four. They did lose to Butler that year, so Butler coming back again. And this team wasn't necessarily made up by anyone crazy. Jamie Skeen, Joey Rodriguez. None of these guys are names that you probably remember other than Shaka. But this is a classic team in my mind. I'm tempted to put them in S tier because of how far they got and how low of a seed they were. And I did that with Loyola. And actually, I think I'm convincing myself to put them in S tier. They were overshadowed by Butler that year, which is the hard part. But yeah, I'm going to put them at the top of Classic. I'm going to put them above Curry's team. I really, really want to put them in S tier. I'm not going to put them in S tier, but I'm right there. I feel you, Shaka. Up next, we have 2013 Wichita State. They were a 9 seed. They made it all the way to the Final Four from the Missouri Valley Conference. They didn't even actually win their conference. They lost to Creighton and just went in as an at-large bid because they had a good regular season. Good thing that they did. They were the only 9 seed to ever reach the Final Four. In the round of 64, they beat Pitt, who was an 8 seed. In the round of 32, they beat the number 1 overall seed, Gonzaga, which was huge. In the Sweet 16, they beat LaSalle. Crazy. I didn't even remember them. 72-58. And then the Elite 8, the biggest security one, they beat number 2 seeded Ohio State 70-66 to get into the Final Four. They did lose to the eventual national champion Louisville by 4 points, though. Very good. This was Fred VanVleet, Ron Baker, if you remember him. Man, this was a throwback. This team's sick. I'm between Classic and S once again. Making it to the Final Four is really tough to fight against, but I just did that with Shaka. So, you know what? I'm going to move Loyola down to the top Classic, and I'm going to move VCU down below Wichita State because they're overshadowed. I actually feel better about that. So Loyola's in Classic, and now Wichita State is second in Classic. I actually feel pretty good about that. Up last, we have the 2024 NC State Wolfpack. They came in as an 11 seed. They reached the Final Four. This team really came out of nowhere. No one really thought highly of them. They got the automatic bid because they won their ACC tournament as a 10 seed. They won 5 games in 5 days. In the first round, they upset Texas Tech, who was a 6 seed. Second round, they beat Oakland, right, who we talked about earlier. In the Sweet 16 was the big one. They upset Marquette 67-58. And then the Elite 8, they beat Duke. Man, Duke has had some tough losses. They did lose to the runners-up Purdue that year, 63-50. But this was DJ Burns, if you remember, the passer, big man. My struggle with them is I don't know if they're Classic. They're not S tier. And I'm kind of struggling with their route a little bit. Like, not that they didn't beat good teams or that they didn't deserve it, but the hardest team they beat was Marquette. They didn't, like, upset a 1 seed or anything crazy like that. Super fun. Very fun. I either have to put them at the end of Classic or at the... I'm going to put them in very fun, below FGCU. Super fun. Great team to watch. Is it Classic March Madness? I don't think people think of NC State that much, if I'm honest with you. Anyway, let me know what I missed. Obviously, I missed some, like I just talked about. FAU, missing that one with Dusty May. Let me know what I missed. Let me know what you think of the list. I could change it tomorrow. I don't know what I think of the list, but anyway, we'll talk to you later. Peace out.